I was just looking for a lost calf when I saw her, swinging slow from a cedar branch, half conscious, wrists tied above her head like some twisted warning. Snow dusted her lashes, and blood ran down her elbows. She was young. Too young. Her lips barely moved, but I heard her anyway. Please, do not let them take me back. Her eyes were wild with something worse than pain, truth. And right then I knew, whoever left her up there was still looking to finish the job. Before we continue, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Comment below. Folks in these parts used to say I was a good man. That was before the fever took my wife and son, before I buried M beneath the elm with nothing but my own hands and a pine shovel. I stopped going to church, stopped answering letters, and let the house go to splinters. Some men drink. Some fight. I chose silence in the hills. Up here, the cold keeps your bones honest, and the wind keeps you from remembering too much. My name is Elijah Boone. I own 80 acres of high mountain land that no one wants except the wind and snow. It was never meant to be a place of healing, but it became that somehow, by necessity more than choice. I ran cattle, mended fences, and buried my prayers in the morning coffee. That was the way of it, until the day I found the girl hanging in the trees. She told me her name was Rose, but even then, I knew she was lying. Not meanly, just the way a wounded animal hides its scent. She looked about 15, though it was hard to tell under the bruises and frostbite. Her hands were raw, her lips cracked from cold, and her dress torn in ways that made my gut turn. I carried her down the ridge without a skin, more than one question. Do you want to live? She nodded. That was all I needed. Back at the cabin, I lit the fire to full blaze and wrapped her in every quilt I had. She slept for 2 days straight, flinching at every sound, her dreams twisted and broken. She never called out for family. Never asked where she was. That told me more than anything else could. When she finally woke, she sat up slow and said, "Thank you for not leaving me." That was the first time I noticed her eyes. Green as spring wheat but haunted, like she had seen something no child ought to see and lived through it barely. I made a stew thick with venison and potatoes and watched as she ate like she had not eaten in weeks. She chewed slow, polite-like, as if she was waiting to be punished for talking too much. She would not speak about where she came from, but I seen enough in my life to fill in blanks. There was a ring around her wrist, dark and raw, like the rope had bit down to the bone. Her fingernails were cracked from clawing, and under the edge of her collar I saw a mark. A brand, not from cattle but human hands. I did not press. Truth has a way of coming out when it is ready. Out here, survival is its own kind of conversation. I went about my chores. She watched from the porch, wrapped in a quilt like a ghost. Days passed. The snow fell heavier. I left her clean clothes by the fire and never asked if she needed help. She would change while I was out in the barn. The silence between us was not awkward. It was necessary. She was not ready to trust me, and I was not ready to hope. But every night, I found myself talking to the grave behind the cabin again. "May," I said, "I brought someone home. She's hurt bad, but I think she needs a second chance." May always believed in that sort of thing. Said even the brokenest people could bloom if someone watered them right. I never believed her. Not until now. One night, after 3 weeks of shared silence and soft glances, I came in from the cold and found her set in the table. She had laid out 2 bowls, even stirred the stew. I stopped in the doorway, hat still on my head, boots frozen stiff. She looked at me and said, "My real name is Clara." I nodded. I figured. Then she said, "I am not just running. I am hiding. From a man who calls himself my father." Her voice cracked on that last word, like it tasted foul just to say it. And just like that, the air changed in the room. Not just because I finally knew her name, but because now, I was part of whatever truth came next. Winter settled hard that year, thick as a secret. The kind that blankets the hills and makes the world feel smaller, quieter, more honest. But inside the cabin, the silence between me and Clara started to shift, not into comfort, but into a kind of shared burden. Like we were 2 mules pulling the same heavy wagon, each trying not to tip it over. Clara spoke little, and when she did, it was clipped and measured. She never asked for anything. Not a stitch of thread. Not a bite more stew. She would patch her own dress by candlelight and eat only after I had put my spoon down. I watched her shoulders. Always tense. Like she was bracing for a blow that never came. Once, I reached to hand her a tin cup of cider, and she flinched so hard she knocked it clean across the table. Her eyes went wide. Not with fear. With shame. I am sorry, she said, stooping to clean it with her apron. I did not mean to. It is just cider, I told her, kneeling to help. No harm done. She nodded, but I could tell. The wound was not the spill. It was the years that led to that flinch. Outside, the mountains were calm and cruel. Wind whipped through the ravine and froze our breath into clouds. I set traps. Hauled wood. But I started doing the small things with more care. Making sure the fire never dipped too low, keeping her boots dry by the hearth, leaving the coffee a little sweet like I noticed she preferred. She began reading my old books. Mostly by lamplight, curled beneath an old quilt stitched with my wife's initials. She started with a tattered Bible, then moved to stories about the West, outlaws, orphans, folks with nothing but grit and borrowed faith. I think she saw herself in the pages. Or maybe she just needed to believe that hardship did not mean hopelessness. But the struggle was not just the cold or her quiet grief. It was what she carried inside. At night, I heard her crying. Not loud. Just soft sobs, like she was trying to bleed sorrow through her breath. I never said a word about it. Just stoked the fire, laid another log, and sat nearby until the trembling stopped. Then came the day she would not come out of bed. Sun was up. Coffee was on. But her room stayed quiet. I knocked. You all right in there? No answer. I opened the door gentle. She was curled up under 3 quilts, face turned to the wall. She did not look sick. She looked hollowed out. Clara, I said. She blinked slow, like it hurt to be awake. It was my birthday. I stepped closer, not sure what to say. My father, he used to mark it with prayer and fastin', said the Lord would not bless a girl too proud of herself. I waited. This year. I thought I might be free of him, but I still woke up scared. I sat beside the bed, hat in my hands. Sometimes freedom comes slow, like thaw after a long winter. She looked at me, tears running sideways on her cheek. What if it never comes? It will, so long as you keep waking up. She did not reply. But the next morning, she was up before I was, sweeping the floor like it was her job to hold the cabin together. And maybe it was, in her own way. That afternoon, she handed me a scrap of paper. A drawing, me sitting on the porch, my hound asleep at my boots. It was not fine art, but it near broke me. I had not seen myself through someone else's eyes in years. And in hers, I looked steady. I wanted to give you something, she said. You did, I told her. Still, shadows followed her. Once, while chopping wood, she froze at the sound of horses in the distance. Dropped the axe. Went pale. They are looking for me, she whispered. I went and stood in the clearing, watching the trail. But the riders turned toward town. Still, I saw what it did to her. How even safety felt borrowed. How the threat of being dragged back into the darkness kept her soul shackled, no matter how far she had run. That night, I left the door to my room open. Just in case she needed to know. Someone would keep watch. It was mid-January when he showed up. Lone rider, broad-shouldered, sitting high in the saddle with a rifle slung across his back and dust on his coat despite the snow. I saw him coming from a mile off, riding slow but sure, like a man who knew what he was looking for. Clara was inside, cleaning carrots for the stew. She had not seen him yet. When he dismounted, I stepped onto the porch. Can I help you? He nodded once, polite but stiff. Name's Levi Garrison. I trap along the West Ridge. I had heard of him. Quiet man, lost his wife and baby in a fire years back. Said little. Kept to himself. Lived off pelts and rumors. Trappin' this far north? I asked. Snow pushed the lines. Game's scarce near the basin. He looked past me toward the door. You live alone? Mostly, I said. You need something? He pulled a bundle from his saddle. 2 hares and a flask of oil. Trade if you are willing. I nodded and stepped aside. He followed me in, polite-like, but I felt Clara's breath hitch the moment she saw him. She turned back to her cutting board, hands moving slower. Levi's eyes lingered a moment too long. Not cruel. Not curious either. More like recognition. We made the trade. He spoke little, but his gaze kept flicking to Clara, watchful, thoughtful, like a man piecing together a story without a skin for it. Later, when he left, Clara sat down hard by the fire. I know him, she said. My spine stiffened. From where? He was at our church. Once. Years ago. I remember him, 'cause he stared at my father with a look like thunder. Did he hurt you? No, she said quick. He saw things. I think. Things others chose not to see. That night, I lay awake longer than usual, thinking about Levi's eyes, about Clara's voice, about the wind howlin' like it carried names too old to speak. Next morning, Levi came back. "I brought jerky and salt," he said. "Got more than I need." He stayed for supper that night. Clara did not speak much, but she watched him closely. After the meal, he asked, careful and low, "Your name really Rose?" Clara stiffened. I waited. She shook her head. "Clara Wren." Levi's mouth pulled tight. "Preacher Josiah's girl?" She nodded. "I figured," he said. "I left that church after the day he made a 10-year-old girl confess she tempted men by smilin' too often." Clara's lips parted, but no words came. Just breath. Relief. Recognition. Levi turned to me. "You keepin' her here?" "I am," I said. "With her choice." He nodded. "Then I will check on you every few days. Just in case someone less kind comes knockin'. From then on, Levi became part of our odd little rhythm. He would bring pelts, stories, sometimes bullets. He never stayed too long, never pressed Clara for more. He knew what it was to carry pain. Some men speak it. Others carry it like a second heart. Clara began trusting him. She would sit near the window when he arrived. Ask about the traps. Once she even smiled. But with trust came fear. One night, after Levi left, she turned to me. "If he can find me, so can they." "Let them try," I said. But I could see it in her face. She was not worried about being found. She was terrified of being dragged back and called a liar all over again. The days grew longer, but the cold did not ease. Snow still capped the trees, and the fire never stopped burning. Yet something inside the cabin began to shift, like a string pulled too tight between three people who cared but did not know how to say so. Clara started waking earlier than me. She would have coffee ready, boots lined by the fire. I would catch her hummin' when she thought she was alone, soft and tuneless, but it filled the house with something I had not felt in years. Life. Levi came more often. Sometimes he brought books, sometimes supplies. He never came empty-handed. But I noticed how his eyes rested on Clara longer now. Not as a man looking to possess, but one wondering if she would ever feel safe enough to smile at him again. And she did. Slowly. Once, she laughed at a story he told about his horse kickin' over a pot of beans and chasin' a raccoon through camp. "Sounded like Sunday service," she teased. We all paused when she said it, the weight of what she meant hanging in the room. But she smiled and Levi smiled back, and I felt my chest tighten, not in anger. In fear. Fear of how fragile it all was. One wrong word. One wrong visitor. And it would all come crashing down. It was not jealousy I felt, not toward Levi. It was protectiveness. He was a good man, but I had seen what even good men could do when pushed too far or given the wrong reason. One morning, Clara handed me a folded piece of paper. I drew this. It was a sketch of the three of us, me on the porch, Levi chopping wood, her sittin' by the fire with a book in her lap. It was simple. Beautiful. I asked her, "Is this how you see us?" She nodded. "It is how I want to see us." I kept that paper in my coat pocket after that. But the piece would not hold. One afternoon, a rider came up from town. I recognized him, Sheriff Doyle. Good man, but easily bent by the church and the coin that came with it. He tipped his hat and looked serious. "You had any visitors lately?" "Just Levi," I said. "And the snow." He held up a flyer. A picture. Faded, but clear enough. Girl gone missin'. Name of Clara Wren. Reverend is off-errand reward for her return. $500. Says she was taken. Abducted. I felt my jaw clench. "You think I would do something like that?" Doyle shrugged. "I think it ain't my business what goes on up here. But if someone else comes a skin, someone from outside town, I cannot promise they will be so neighborly." I took the flyer and nodded once. "She is safe here." He looked me square. "Then keep her that way." Word spreads fast. When he rode off, Clara stepped out from behind the door. I heard. I could not lie. "I would not let them take you." She stared at me, trembling. Even if it meant losing everything? I looked at her, really looked. The fear in her voice was not about going back. It was about being betrayed. "No one is losing anything," I said. "Not if I can help it." But doubt had already been sown. That night she stayed in her room. Did not light her lamp. Did not come to supper. Levi came by, noticed her absence, and asked softly, "Did she run?" "No," I said. "But her heart might be trying to." We sat in silence. The wind howled outside. Finally, Levi said, "I will be back in 3 days. With something that might help her stay for good." "Like what?" "Legal help," he said. I got a friend in Dunslow. Lawyer. Owes me a favor. Maybe we can file a petition. Wards of protection. Name change, if it comes to that. My throat caught. You would do that? She saved me first, he said, standing to leave. She just does not know it yet. As he rode off, I walked to Clara's room and knocked. You do not have to open the door, I said. Just know, no one here is looking to own you. Only to shelter you. There was no reply. But the next morning, the table was set again. And beside my coffee mug, I found that sketch she made. Only this time, she had drawn her name under it. Clara Boone. Have you ever trusted someone you barely knew, because something in your spirit told you to? The thaw came late that year, slow drips from the eaves, steam rising from the earth like breath from a tired mule. But inside the cabin, something warmer than spring was stirring. The kind of warmth that does not come from firewood, but from feeling safe enough to speak your whole name without fear. Clara started talking more. Not just small things like whether the soup needed salt or where the rabbits had burrowed, but real things. Deep things. Truths that weighed heavy on her tongue. One morning while we shelled beans, she asked, "Did your son laugh much?" The question cut soft, but deep. "All the time," I said. Even when he broke his leg, he tried to joke with the doctor. Said he hoped the new one would be straighter. She smiled. "He sounds like someone who would have liked me." "He would have," I said, meaning every word. That night, we sat by the fire. She stared into the flames like she was talking to someone on the other side of them. He baptized me in a creek so cold I could not breathe. Said the shock would wash the sin clean out of me. Her voice trembled, but her hands stayed steady. I was 9. I had lied about talking sugar. I waited. Let her keep going if she needed to. He said purity could be beaten back into a girl if she wandered. Said my body was not mine. It belonged to God, and he was God's voice. I could barely breathe. My hands curled into fists, not out of anger toward her, but at the men who hide behind scripture to break little girls. She looked at me then. "Do you believe in God, Mr. Boone?" I thought a moment. "I believe in mercy. In justice. I reckon that is God enough." She nodded slow. "I used to pray someone would find me." I stopped after the second time he locked me in the root cellar. My jaw clenched. "You are found now." She leaned her head on the arm of the chair. "Then why do I still wake up scared?" "Because the body remembers," I said. "Even when the soul starts to heal." She looked at me then, really looked. Like she was seeing me as more than a quiet man with a cabin and a haunted past. "You never tried to fix me," she said. "You just stayed." "Some things fix themselves when they feel safe," I told her. That night, she fell asleep with her head near my boots, curled up like a pup who finally found shelter. I did not move, just kept the fire stoked and whispered a thank you to the woman in the grave out back. The next day, Clara asked if I would teach her how to ride better. I saddled my calmest mare, and we took to the trails. She was shaky at first, but determined. By mid-morning, she was riding alone beside me, hair tangled with wind, eyes bright with something close to joy. "I feel like I am flying," she called. "You are," I said. "You are flying free." Later that week, she helped me build a shelf for her books. I watched as she lined up each one like treasure, running her fingers along the spines like they were old friends she finally got to visit again. "I never had a shelf of my own," she said. "You do now," I replied. That evening, she placed one last thing on that shelf, a framed sketch of me and Levi chopping wood. "That's your family," she said, soft. "If you want it to be." I could not speak, just nodded and swallowed the lump in my throat. There was one more moment, small, but it near split me wide. I found her sitting by the grave one morning, her knees tucked up, whispering to the stone like it could hear. "I will take care of him," she said. "He is more father than I ever had." Then she reached out and patted the earth like she was touching a shoulder. Later, I asked her what she said. "Nothing important," she smiled. "Just a promise." That was the day I realized her heart was not just open. It was starting to bloom. And Lord help whoever tried to steal that light again. The sky turned strange that morning, flat gray with a cold wind that smelled like iron and sorrow. I should have known something was coming. The animals stirred restless, and Clara stayed inside, pressing flowers between book pages like she was trying to keep something alive that kept wanting to die. I was out at the line fence when I heard the hoofbeats. 3 riders. Clean coats. Sharp boots. Government types, or worse, men with no kindness in their spines. Clara watched from the window, her face drained to white. I stepped onto the porch. One of them tipped his hat. We are here on behalf of Reverend Josiah Wren. We heard you may be harboring his daughter. I do not harbor, I said. I shelter. They showed a paper, some twisted version of a warrant, written with enough legal talk to scare good men into foolish acts. She is a minor, the lead man said, and under the Reverend's guardianship by church law. I do not follow church law, I told him. His smile turned bitter. You follow something. Be smart, sir. This can end quiet, or it can end cold. Inside, I saw Clara rise. She walked to the door with her chin up, her hands shaken. She stood beside me like she belonged there. I am not going with them, she said. You do not have a choice, the man replied. Clara stepped forward. Then let me tell you what you are talking back. She raised her sleeves. The room fell silent. This is what he gave me, she said, showing the scars on her arms. And this. She turned and lifted the edge of her dress, revealing the faded brand near her ribs. He called it purification. Said the fire would burn the sin out. The men shifted, uneasy now. Truth has a way of hollowing out false power. You still want to take me back? She said, voice steely now. The lead man looked to me, then to her, and said, We will return. With more. They turned and rode off. Inside, Clara collapsed. She cried hard, full-bodied sobs that rocked her thin shoulders like storm winds through brittle branches. I knelt beside her, but she pushed me away. I should have never come here, she whispered. I brought danger to your door. You brought truth, I said. And no man who fears truth deserves power over you. But she would not meet my eyes. That night she disappeared. I woke to an open door, and her coat gone. The books still lined her shelf. Her shoes still sat by the hearth. But her heart had run. I knew where she went even before the snow finished falling. I found her at the creek, the one near the edge of our land, where the water ran dark and fast. She was sitting on a rock, staring at her reflection. You were right, she said as I approached. The body remembers. I crouched beside her. And the heart forgives. She shook her head. You are good, Mr. Boone. But I do not belong to good things. That is a lie someone put in you, I said. And it has no right living there. She looked up, eyes red but fierce. I wanted to stay. I wanted to believe that maybe I was not what he said. But now they are coming, and I do not want you to get hurt. You are worth getting hurt for. The wind blew, and she whispered. No one ever said that to me before. I put my hand on her shoulder. Then let me say it again. She crumpled into my arms like a wounded fawn, sobbing into my coat. I remember being locked in the cellar, she said. I remember the sound of his belt, the hymns he would hum while I cried. My throat ached. Every girl deserves to be believed, I said. And every monster deserves the daylight. That night we rode back together. And I swore to God and to the grave out back, I would not let anyone take her again. Not while I still had breath in my lungs and a name in this world. The days that followed were quiet, but not peaceful. That kind of silence settles different. Like the air right before a twister touches ground. Clara barely spoke. She moved through the cabin like a shadow, doing chores out of habit, not hope. Her laughter was gone. So was her humming. Even Levi noticed. He came by with a new rifle cartridge and a warm pie from a widow in town, but Clara just nodded and disappeared into the barn. She thinking about running again? He asked. No, I said. She is thinking about staying, and what it might cost. That night, I found her sitting outside the cabin, coat pulled tight, her eyes on the dark ridgeline where the men had come from. I keep seeing it, she whispered. Not the beatings. Not the cellar. Just the way he smiled when he hurt me. Like he thought God was proud of him. I sat beside her. He is wrong, Clara. He has always been wrong. She looked down at her hands. But what if they come with a real lawman next time? What if I get dragged back in chains and no one stops it? I will stop it, I said. But even as I spoke, I felt the weight of my own words. I was a rancher, a man with land and a name, but no real power. Not in the eyes of law and church. The very next morning, the betrayal came. A man from the county court rode in with 2 deputies and a writ in his hand. Not from the town. From the state capital. The Reverend has filed formal guardianship claims, the man said, with allegations of abduction and indoctrination. Clara stood frozen behind me, the hem of her dress shaken in her hands. They are saying I brainwashed her, I muttered. The man nodded grim. Sir, if you do not surrender her, you could be arrested. Your land seized. Clara stepped forward. I will go, she said. My heart stopped. I will not let him ruin your life, she whispered to me. Not after all you gave me. No, I said. No, Clara. But she had already picked up her shawl. She looked me in the eyes, and I saw it, resignation, not fear. A girl who had been caged so long she forgot she was ever meant to fly. I cannot ask you to fight the whole world for me, she said. You did not ask, I replied. I offered, but she was already walking to the wagon. The deputies watched with smug calm. One of them offered her a hand, but she climbed up without touching him. I stood there, fists clenched, teeth grindin'. Levi stepped out from the trees just as they turned the wagon. You letting them take her? He asked me, voice low. I could stop them, I said. But it would end in blood. Mine, maybe hers. And then what? He looked after the wagon, his face carved in stone. We failed her, he said. No, I said, watchin' until she disappeared over the hill. We are not finished yet. That night, I sat by the fire and stared into the embers like they held some answer. Clara was gone. Again. But this time, she chose it. Not because she wanted to, but because she loved me more than herself. And that tore me wide open. I went to the grave and knelt down. May, I whispered, I need help. I know she is not blood, but she is ours now. And I cannot let them do to her what the world did to you. Die sufferin', with no one to stand up. The wind blew cold across the trees. And in that moment, I knew what I had to do. I was going to get her back. Not with a rifle. Not with fists. With truth. 3 days passed. Each one colder than the last, though spring was on the calendar. I did not eat much. Barely slept. The cabin felt hollow without her. Like someone had taken the light out of the lamp, but left the flame burnin' anyway. I sat with Levi one night, both of us staring at the fire like it owed us an answer. I saw him once, Levi said, voice low. Your preacher. Before he was someone. Before he had a title. He was just a man barkin' on a corner with fire in his mouth and poison in his eyes. Clara's not his daughter, I said suddenly. Levi looked over. What? I stood up and pulled out a letter. Clara's. She had hidden it beneath my old Bible before she left. It was folded careful, with my name written in a girl's cursive. Inside were 3 things. A note short and steady. A birth record. And a page torn from a church ledger. The note said this. If he says I belong to him, tell him this. I am not his. I was never his. My real mother died bringing me into this world. He bought me from a woman who needed coin. He raised me like property, not blood. The record's in the church ledger. I found it while cleanin'. I took the page. I was afraid to tell you. Afraid it meant I really did not belong anywhere. But now I know, I do not have to be born to someone to be worth protectin'. I only have to be believed. The birth record proved it. Clara May Wren, mother, unknown. Father, none listed. But the church ledger said everything. Child taken into household as ward. No legal adoption. I stared at those pages, then at Levi. She ain't his, I said. He lied. All these years he lied. Levi stood up. You know what this means? It means, I said slowly, we can fight. We rode out at dawn. Not with guns. With papers. With truth. Levi took the documents to his lawyer friend in Dunslow, Samuel Wyatt. Gray-haired, sharp as a fence post, and just mean enough to enjoy beating a man like Wren at his own game. Wyatt filed emergency petitions with the state. One to declare Clara a free minor by cause of unfit guardianship, another to secure her temporary wardship under my roof until full emancipation. We have to get her to testify, Wyatt said. She has to speak the truth in front of the court. It will be dangerous. He will try to discredit her. She will speak, I said. And I will stand beside her. We reached the town 2 days later, just as Wren was holding a revival meeting. There he stood, suit pressed, hands raised to heaven, shouting about righteousness and punishment, all while Clara sat off to the side in a plain dress, pale and still. She saw me. Her eyes widened, but she did not rise. I waited outside until the meeting ended. When she came out, she walked slow. Why did you come? She whispered. To bring you home, I said. But first, to bring you justice. I handed her the papers. The note. The proof. She read it. Her hands shook. Then she looked up, her voice strong for the first time in days. He always said I was his punishment. I nodded. He was wrong. You are no punishment. You are a promise. She closed her eyes and said, Then I will speak. And just like that, the tide turned. Not with a shot. With a girl's courage. The courtroom was just a converted chapel at the edge of Dunslow. Creaky pews, worn floors, and a judge who had seen too many liars to be impressed by the preacher's polished boots. Clara stood between me and Levi, wearing her best borrowed dress and her scars like quiet medals. I had never seen her so still, so sure. She held the ledger page in one hand, her note in the other. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was clear as creek water in spring. I was not born to him. He bought me from a poor woman, raised me as a tool, not a child, told me my body was for God's will, his will. When I tried to run, he branded me, said it would remind me where I belonged. The courtroom was silent. Even the dust held its breath. Judge Marrow, an old man with a face like baked leather, leaned forward. "Why run now?" he asked. Clara looked at me, then at Levi, then down at her hands. "Because I finally believed I was worth savon." She turned to Ren, who sat stone-faced in his dark coat. "You said I was yours. But I never was. I am not your daughter. I am not your sin. I am mine." Gasps rippled through the back row. A few church folk had shown up to support the reverend. Now they shifted uneasy. Ren rose, slow and calm, like a wolf dressing in lamb's wool. "She is confused," he said. "Corrupted by isolation, poisoned by the false kindness of men who mean well, but lead her astray. I raised her in holiness. In discipline." He turned to the judge, voice slick as oil. "Discipline is not abuse." But Levi stepped forward. "I have seen his kind before," he said. "Men who confuse power with providence, who hurt children and hide behind pulpits." Then I stepped up. "I have lived alone since my family died. I know grief. I know silence. Clara brought life back into my home, and I watched her fight her own fears every day just to breathe free. That ain't confusion. That is courage." The judge rubbed his jaw. "Do you wish to remain with Mr. Boone?" Clara stepped forward, chin lifted. "I do. If he will have me." I looked at her, my throat tight. "I already do." It was not over, but it had turned. The judge granted temporary wardship to me, pending final approval. Ren stormed out, fury in his eyes, but the law had cracked his hold. And that was enough for now. Back at the cabin, Clara did not cry. She laughed. First soft, then louder. "I feel taller," she said. "You are," I told her. "You stood." In the days that followed, we got letters. Threats. Whispers in town. But also support. A woman from the next county wrote Clara a note. "I was once a girl like you. I never spoke. I wish I had. You are my voice now." Others followed. Levi brought more books. I built her a writing desk. She began to write, not just her story, but the stories of other girls like her. Stories that no longer had to end in silence. One night, she brought me a folded paper. It said, "Elijah Boone is my family. Not by blood, by choice." And that choice saved me. I held that note in my hands long after she went to bed. Outside, the wind howled. But inside, we had already weathered the worst of the storm. Spring crept in slow, like it was being cautious. Like it had seen too much sorrow in these hills and was waiting for permission to bloom again. Clara gave it that permission. She rose with the sun, fed the hens, planted rows of squash and beans like she had been doing it all her life. Her laughter returned, not as something fragile but strong. Rooted. The sound of someone who had walked through fire and come out carrying light. I had never seen a transformation so quiet, or so mighty. One morning, she came to me with her hair braided and her chin lifted. "I want to teach," she said. "Not just letters. I want to teach girls how to fight. With words. With law. With truth." "You already are," I said. But she wanted more. She wanted to go back to town. Not to stay. To speak. Sheriff Doyle helped organize it, quiet-like, in the church hall. Clara stood before a room of women and girls, and even a few skeptical men. She read from her journal. Showed her ledger page. Told them the names of things most folks keep buried in shadow. "I am not ashamed," she said. "And neither should you be." Some folks walked out, but most stayed. And when she finished, an older woman, thin, bent, trembling, stood and whispered, "Me too." Clara hugged her. Then another woman stood. And another. By the end of the night, 12 had spoken. Not loud, not polished, but free. The next week, the town board sent a letter to the Reverend's church, revoking his influence and suspending his gatherings until further investigation. It would take months, maybe longer. But the tide was turning. I found Clara on the porch that night, arms wrapped around herself, eyes on the stars. "You did that," I said. "No," she replied. "You did when you stayed." I sat beside her. "You are not the same girl I found hanging in the trees." She shook her head. I was not hanging to die, you know. I tied myself up that way. To make them think someone else took me. I blinked. I thought if they believed I was stolen, they would not think I ran. And now I do not care what they think. I ran. I survived. And I am not done speaking. I could not find words good enough to answer that. So I just put my hand over hers. She smiled and leaned her head against my shoulder. You think your wife would have liked me? She would have loved you, I said. And she would have been proud of me for following her example. We sat there a long time, the night soft around us. Later, I found a piece of paper on her desk. It said, "Sometimes the family we choose teaches us who we truly are." Clara had chosen. And in her choice, I found who I still was. Not a man of sorrow. A father. Have you ever felt stronger because someone finally believed in you? It was early summer when he came back, riding into town like a thundercloud with lawmen from the capital and a smug smile that said he thought he still owned the world. Reverend Josiah Wren dismounted in front of the courthouse, Bible in one hand, court order in the other. Clara stood at my side, chin high, hand steady. He thinks paper gives him power, she said. But he forgot what truth can do. This time the town stood with her. Dozens of folks, women she had spoken with, mothers, widows, even a few hard-faced ranchers who had seen too much pain to pretend anymore. They lined the steps, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. Sheriff Doyle met Wren at the doors. You are not welcome here today, Reverend, he said. I have lawful grounds, Wren replied. You have accusations, the sheriff corrected. And this town has testimonies. Inside the courtroom, Judge Marrow took the bench again. Wren presented his new document, slick with legal jargon and wrapped in sanctimonious tone. But Clara stepped forward. May I speak? The judge nodded. I was not taken, she said. I escaped. She held up the old ledger page. This proves he is not my father. Then she turned slowly to the crowd gathered behind her. And this, she said, proves I am no longer afraid. Levi stood near the back. He tipped his hat in quiet pride. I could not move. I just watched her. This girl who once flinched at the sound of boots, now speaking like thunder with a voice no man could chain again. Wren stood to respond. But this time his voice cracked. She lies, he said. She's been poisoned by that man, Boone, and his wilderness gospel. Clara did not even flinch. She is not his by law, he shouted. She belongs to the church. No, Judge Marrow said calmly. She belongs to herself. Then the gavel came down. And just like that, the chains broke. The Reverend turned furious and stormed out alone. No men followed. No church crowd. Just dust and silence. Outside, the town gathered round Clara. Hands on her shoulders. Soft thanks. Tears from strangers who now saw her as more than a girl with scars. She was proof. Proof that truth can rise. That night, back at the cabin, Clara walked to the little grave behind the house and knelt. I did what you would have done, she whispered. I stayed. I stood. And I am safe. I gave her space. Watched from the porch. When she came back inside, she said only one thing. I would like to stay forever, if that is all right. I opened my arms. Forever sounds just right. And so it was. Time moved gentle after that. Not fast. Not slow. Just right. Clara stayed. Not because she had nowhere else to go, but because she had finally found where she belonged. She spent her mornings in the garden, her afternoons at the little schoolhouse they let her help reopen just down the valley. And her evenings, those were mine to share. Reading by the fire. Shell and peas. Logan soft over things we had already lived through and never thought we would. She kept the sketch of our family on the mantel. Some days she would add to it. A flower in her hair. A dog we took in. The mare she trained from skittish to loyal. Other days she would sit at her desk and write, pages and pages in neat rows, her handwriting steadier now, her voice more certain. Stories for girls who do not think they are worth saving, she told me once. Because sometimes all it takes is reading about someone else who survived. I watched her change the town, without ever raising her voice. She taught more than letters and numbers, she taught truth. How to speak it. How to stand inside it. Women began knocking on our door just to talk. Some brought daughters. Some brought bruises. Clara welcomed them all with tea and firelight and a silence that knew when to wait and when to say, I understand. As for me, well, I began to live again. Not like I did before May died. That part of my life was its own story. But this chapter, this was something new. I woke with purpose. I went to sleep with peace. And I carried the proud weight of being called Papa Boone by children who saw me only as what I chose to be, strong, steady, and theirs. Clara never called me father. Not once. But when folks asked who I was, she always said the same thing. He is my family. And Lord help me, that meant more than any blood tie ever could. We built a new room on the cabin. Her room. With a desk and a window and shelves for books. We planted lilacs by the steps and a peach tree out back. Every spring, she tied a ribbon on that tree in memory of the girl she used to be. The girl who ran. The girl who almost gave up. The girl who held on long enough to be found. I remember her, she said once. But I do not miss her. She did her part. Now I get to live. The Reverend never returned. Rumors said he moved out east, trying to rebuild his image. But the whispers followed him. Because truth travels quiet, but it travels far. Clara never wasted breath on hate. She simply outlived it. And that, in the end, was the finest justice of all. One Sunday, I found her sitting beside May's grave with a bouquet of daisies and lavender. I talked to her, she told me, eyes soft. Not with words. Just thanks. For keeping you strong enough to find me. I nodded. She would be proud of you. She smiled. I think she already is. As summer passed into fall, Clara's story became more than memory. It became movement. Girls from all over the territory came to live with families who cared. Churches rewrote their rules. And men who once turned away began to listen. She changed the world, starting with mine. And I, once a broken man in a broken house, now stood steady with a legacy not born of blood, but of belief. Some folks think family is what you are born into. Bloodlines. Names passed down like cattle brands. But out here, in the wide hush of the Wild West, we learn different. We learn that family is forged in fire, in silence, in standing beside someone when no one else will. Clara was not my daughter by birth. She was my daughter by every hard-earned choice that came after. She chose to stay. I chose to protect. And together, we built something no lawman, no preacher, no past could undo. I watched her rise from the ashes of who she had been, scared, silenced, scarred, and become a voice loud enough to echo across valleys. She taught me that redemption does not come in one big moment. It comes in daily mercy, in gentleness, in the courage to face the next day anyway. And I reckon that is what love truly is. It is not soft. It is strong. It does not bind. It frees. And sometimes, it finds you when you are not looking. Clara once asked me, "Do you think I will ever be more than what he made me?" I told her, "You already are. You just had to live long enough to see it." She did. And because of her, so did I. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever found family in someone who was not blood, but loved you better than any kin ever did? Share your story in the comments below. Someone out there may need to hear it today.